Okay, my name is Thomase Scholze. You might have seen me as Tosho and on Stack Exchange or Twitter. And I've worked with Multisite for the last 3 years on our plugin Multilingual WordPress. And today I want to share some things I've learned. What is Multisite? Multisite is not ready, really. It is an attempt to collect multiple sites under one database and with one network administration screen. But there are many unfinished problems, and I want to show some hidden traps and some confusions today. One thing you can rely on with Multisite is multi-rewrite or something equivalent in IIS or Nginx. This is one of the very few things you know that works. You don't have to deal with query parameters to access post types or terms. With some exceptions, you will see this later. There's a network administration, and is network admin is the most important check to see what the current context is. Multisite can be installed as in two types: subsite, where each site is under the same domain, or subdomain. You can run each site under a different subdomain, or you can change the domain altogether. There's some important confusion in the terminology. When Multisite was integrated in WordPress 3.0, it was a separate project before, WPMU, and many terms were just taken into WordPress where they don't make much sense. For example, a single site is still sometimes referred as a blog, but sometimes as a site. And one site, and what we today call a network. Each multi-site installation can contain many networks. WordPress.com is a good example. There are, I think, 60,000 installations, multi-site installations, and millions of networks in these installations. And to get the current network ID, you have to use get current site. This is something you have always to look at the source code in WordPress to see what you really get now, a site, a blog, or a network. This is, there's no consistency. This is general network dashboard. There isn't much to see. This is from a site I do together with Franz Josef, WP Crowds. And here's an example. WP Crowds DE is a subdomain. This is a subdomain installation, and I've just entered a complete domain, and this works mostly just out of the box. You don't need a domain mapping plugin if you use a subdomain installation. When I talk about compatible code, I make a difference between passive and active compatibility. Passive means whatever you write, a theme or a plugin, it just works in a single site installation or in a multi-site installation. And it doesn't cause any big problems. Active means you actually require a multisite, and you try to change multisite specific behavior. The most common error that we have seen in multilingual pressing, most important compatibility problem was that many people are not aware that you can switch the site context. Site context is switched with switch to block. I get to that later again. You should always check with this is multisite, because if you don't do that, the second function isn't available, and you get a fatal error. Many functions are only loaded in a multisite environment. And then you have to check if you are in a switched context. The reason is that the same hook can be called multiple times. For example, you try to hook into save post to save a post meta field. Another plugin, like zum Beispiel, for example, multilingual press, hooks into save post 2, then switches to another block and starts to synchronize these posts into every other side. With it calls a WP insert post, and WP insert post calls save post again. So your plugin or your theme might run on all of these save post hooks and write the wrong data from the first site into all other sites. Plugins doing that are, for example, Advanced Custom Field, use WP SEO plugin. They all don't have these checks. What we did in multilingual press, we empty the global post variable completely, then switch, do our work, switch back to the first, and then refill that variable. This is very dirty, but the only way to not to break the other plugins, because, for example, Advanced Custom Fields just deletes then all other data, and that's not, of course, for the user a huge problem. Losing data is something that never should happen. The second most important custom post types and taxonomies. Some themes introduce post types or taxonomies, and these are, of course, not available in a network. In a network, in the main network screen, only the theme from the main site is available and active, and all other themes from other sites are just not loaded. So their post types are not available, and if another plugin tries to synchronize post types or taxonomies or to copy data from one side to the other, they don't know that these post types actually exist. So post types and taxonomies always belong to a plugin, never in a theme. Then there are some user experience problems. Not terrible, but sometimes very annoying. Some plugins use admin pointers, these little pop-ups, to show what's new after an update. And if you save the dismiss click from the user per site, the user has to see it on every site he visits. For my tests in multilingual press, I install sometimes multiple hundreds sites in one rush, and then I have to look for different languages, RTL or LTR languages. I have to go into every admin screen, and I get every time the same admin pointers. Yoast SEO again is a very common example. don't do that. Test this in your plugin or theme, and always make sure not to show the same information twice if it's not absolutely necessary. The database scheme might be out of date because an WordPress update doesn't update all tables in all sites. This is for performance reasons, because some networks are very large, maybe 50,000 sites, and each site with many tables. You can do that in one step. So you have to run these network updates manually after the core update of WordPress. As a result, you cannot rely on the database. This is a problem you cannot resolve in your code. You can only resolve it in the pod. Because many users, not many, but some don't run these network updates. Or they run these updates just partially for 50 sites of 200. And that's multiple times. So it might happen that in a network installation, you have sites with 3 different database schemes. And your code will break if you rely on certain changes in, for example, term taxonomy table or similar. And you get really strange support questions then. Always ask, did you update all network tables? This is, you can't do this on yourself in your own code. You have to ask the user to do that. In some networks, like for example, again, WordPress.com, users can just create an account and get their own blog. And this is, of course, misused often. So some users create spam blogs. You can mark a blog as a spam blog here, and it will not be public anymore, just visible for the user, or not even for the user at all. The difference, the check for a spam blog happens between the actions init and WP loaded. Always wait for WP loaded. Don't work on init, because you don't want to run your plugin on a spam block. Why? There are no reasons to do that. Init is often used in tutorials and examples, but I always recommend to use WP loaded. It's just, you save some time. Active compatibility means you really try to work in a network. The first step is to require a network installation. This is the plugin header network true. This looks like a Boolean, but WordPress never checks for false. It just searches for true. So saying network false won't do anything. This is the only value is true. That means the plugin will be visible in the network plugin administration screen only, and not on each site in that network. But it will still be visible in a single site installation. You cannot prevent that. So some people, we have this as a support question. Sometimes some people download, for example, multilingual WordPress. Multilingual WordPress requires a network, of course, and to check if your plugin is actually activated as a network plugin, use the first parameter of the register activation hook. This is a Boolean, true or false, and if it's false, show some error or just stop. The same is available for the deactivation. You get this parameter again. this is the only thing that you can rely on. The plugin header is just a suggestion. You cannot rely on that it will actually work. Getting information about the network is the most important function is wget_sites. Here we use sites, not blocks. It returns data with block ID meaning sites and site ID meaning network. This is the terminology. Yeah, and some other information like domain path, is it a spam block, etc. wp_get_sites calls in the background WP is large network. That's a very interesting function because there are two hard-coded limits, 10,000 users or 10,000 sites. If one of both is true, you don't get anything from wp_get_sites. You get an empty array. You don't even get information about the main site. You get nothing. Not an error, just an empty array. You can change the limit with a limit parameter in wp_get_sites, but I wouldn't do that. 10,000 sites is a query that will probably very slow already, and the calls to these functions are not cached. If you need these informations, call it once in your plugin and pass this information through to all code that needs it. Don't call it twice. This is expensive. And in cases where you get an empty array, you can just stop working. There isn't much you can do. Yeah. Are there already some questions now? This is pretty heavy stuff already.
Could you repeat the difference between block, site, and network?
Maybe. This is the network administration. This is difficult, especially if you don't look at it visually, just try to work in your code. This is a network. There can be multiple network screens in one installation. What we see on the left, themes, plugins, are all network-wide settings. We can activate a theme. We can activate a plugin network-wide. All plugins refer to the same network ID, and the main site has a site ID, and this is usually identical to the network ID. The network ID is actually just one site ID. Block ID is an alias for site ID, and site is in WordPress sometimes used for a network or for a block. This is you just have to learn it and always look at the code. It's confusing. Sometimes I do this wrong too. This is one site. You can see site ID is 3 in the address bar. And it has its own settings. For example, the settings tab is similar to the settings page on a single site. You still can access the settings of the normal single site, but you can change it here too. The interesting thing is you cannot get a new tab here into this screen. There's no API. We do it anyway in multilingual WordPress by using output buffering. We just hook into the headline, start the buffer, replace everything, inject our tab, and if our tab is called, inject our content. This is risky because if two plugins try to do that, it will break, of course. There's a ticket for that for 3 years already, no progress. Many multi-site tickets on track are very frustrating to look at. There isn't much progress, but it's a catch-22. The installation of a multi-site is ridiculously difficult. The argument for that is because multi-site is difficult, it makes the installation difficult to get normal, simple users out. But the installation is actually the most difficult thing already, and making that easier, we could easier see what is important, what we have to solve first. We get more user feedback. We don't get the user feedback because many people don't get the installation right. This is something what I did in multilingual press support for the last years. Many times users came to our support, something didn't work. They try to install a new WordPress into an existing one, and this works. You can install two multi-sites into the same directory, but with two different code bases. You get even links between two, but nothing else happens. This is, usually I just clean it up and give them a new installation, because for me it's easy, but for many users, they are confused because the codecs or handbooks mix it with unclear terminology, and there are so many different options to install a multi-site. Somewhere a simple button to convert a single site to a multi-site with one click would be really help, but it won't happen. Back to switch to blog again. Switch to blog switches the current WordPress context to another site. The site ID is not validated at all, so you can pass an unlikely integer, PHP int max, and WordPress will try happily to load user roles and the database for this ID, and it will break in very ugly ways and unexpected corners. Always validate the site ID. Use a site ID you have found in WP get sites. So always you have to call this before you can call switch to blog.
A few years ago, it was like a very heavy operation with switch to blog, I think. Does it change?
In a moment, I can do that. Yes, it is still slow. What I said, it changes, it loads the current user roles for the new site and the new database prefix. It keeps the old rewrite rules from the previous site and the old translation files. So if you try to switch from an English site to a Czech one, you get the English permalinks, you get English translation. Everything is mixed together. You can actually not use get permalink. This is broke. For example, many sites use custom tag base or category base. You have to pull it manually, insert it into the URLs, or use parameter URLs. URLs. So post type, like post, and is post and post ID, whatever. The user will get another redirect, but this is the only thing that actually works. So you have to test it. You have to test everything. You cannot rely on your write rules and translation. Like you said, switch to block is slow. This is maybe, I don't know if it's too complex. Just this little call, switch to block, not doing anything, is it's not that expensive. Depending on the system, 3 to 10 milliseconds. But if you call restore current block after each switch to block, which is the recommended way to do it. Switch to block, do something, restore current block. Switch to the next block, do something, restore current block. Don't. This is expensive. This is really, really expensive. Doing it this way, just switch through all blocks, and at the end, switch to the original, the first block again, and then clear these two global variables will save you 50% of the time. Even if you don't have done anything, just calling switch to block, it's already 50%. And depending on the size of a network, this can, the user will notice the difference. If you need just the database, in many cases you don't need user capabilities, use get block prefix with a site ID as a parameter, and that's enough. You don't have to call switch to block. This is often the faster alternative. And that's for now all. If you have any questions, ask now. We have a microphone. Has anyone a question?
Come on, running around and bringing you the microphone. Anyone?
I don't think I was that clear.
Or too clear?
Okay.
Okay.
We can do an early break.
Who already uses Multisite? Okay, who wants to use Multisite? And who wants to code on Multisite?
Ah,
oh, wow.
I was scared away.
I guess you can download the slides somewhere after the presentation.
I will put them on WP Crowds tomorrow.
Okay, so who would like to try it after he has the slides in his hands?
I will tweet it under the hashtag on Twitter.
No, it's really hard, actually. I mean, I thought about it, and I was just wondering what for I can use it, and as I see, like, actually it's not for me, because I mean, I'm not running multi-block anything. I was like thinking about it if I can use it for my client websites, you know, to just like work on one thing and then do the rest. But this is like too clumsy.
No, it's for simple use cases. It's really comfortable to use multi-site. I do this for my private clients. I use always a multi-site because I install one site meta.main domain. This is a private site. You cannot access it without login, and that's where I keep all discussions with the client. not in some email archives that are hidden and hard to search. I put everything into this meta site. This is, you can add pictures or some calendar plugins, whatever, and this is really nice and easy to use. The client, there are themes like P2 or something, where the client can just type its post, his question into the front end and hit publish, and that's very nice. You don't, this is a good use case for multi-site, and you don't need active compatibility in your own code. You can use existing things and it will just work.
Okay, I think it's overkill for me. It's just probably like, I mean, it's great to know actually what are the problems there, and like just to know if it's good for me or not. That's like really important.
It is interesting to write this code. You learn a lot about WordPress at the edges, because there are some things where you just hit a wall. Endpoints, URL endpoints, getting these from another site is close to impossible. And this helps to understand the core completely in its architecture. For example, the rewrite rules are a global variable in WordPress. The translation is a global variable. You learn how bad global variables are. Generally, you don't ever use them. Don't ever use global constants. Everything in the global namespace will hurt you. And this is something you learn, and you can apply these lessons to your own code, even if that never has anything to do with multi-site. You write better code once you hit the bad code. And this is something everyone should try once or two times.
Hi, I would like to know if, in retrospective, your decision to use the multi-site feature for the multi-language plugin was the right one, or do you still fancy the multi-site?
Yes, we talked about that many years ago when multi-site moved into WordPress. This was one of the first ideas, because you can, in a multi-site, you can use true localization. If you handle multiple languages in one site, like Polylang or Babel does, you have to use the same theme, the same plugins, the same search engine for all languages. This isn't localization.
That's sort of usual scenario. If I just a different
no,
variation of a site.
You need many of our users use completely different themes for different languages. A different set of plugins. Some plugins, for example, do deal with typographic.
Okay, translate text and posts and media. Would you recommend your plugin or some other one? Just for translating posts and media?
It depends on the amount of posts. The more you have, the more database queries and the slower, the more database queries you need in a single site, and the slower your site gets. I'm a performance freak, and for the next version of multilingual WordPress, I cut down database queries. Again, we were already very fast, but now even if you have 60 sites, we have 3 database queries. Try that with any other plugin. No single site plugin can do that. They all have to change the main query, something we don't touch. They have to create hidden ghost posts for custom post types and posts, and it's difficult to get onto your content once you have deactivated the plugin. This is something what I really like about the multi-site solution. Once you deactivate our plugin, all your sites will still work. the connections won't be available, but all content is still accessible. You can even switch to another plugin that uses Multisite for translations.
Yes.
There are other plugins doing.
You could say that when I store the language in some sort of a meta table, the imposed join will take so much of the performance that one can think.
I was going to say, I think, yeah, I think it's Multisite's much more. Sorry, I'm here. Multisite's much more of a headache for plugin developers. Like the guy was asking about using it on client sites, and actually, like you said, I've used it on client sites, and it's really good. Like the plus side is that to set up a new client, it takes like 10 seconds, and then their site's up and running, and then you can add a theme or whatever you want to do. And the other really good thing, I know a lot of freelance developers who, for each new client, they'll buy like a new hosting package, not a very expensive one, but every single time. Whereas with Multisite, you can get one good hosting package, and you can set up Memcache, and you can set up all the best, like, you know, caching plugins and everything else, all the SEO stuff that you want. And then, like, just each new client takes a few seconds, and they're up and running in no time.
We have a feature in Multilingual WordPress that doesn't necessarily belong into our plugin. This is, but again, it's in, and we can take it out. When you copy a site, when you create a new site, you can tick a checkbox and say based on this, or this site. So many of our users that do professional development create templates, completely set up theme options and pre-made post content and plugins, etc. And then just use based on site X, they call it template. These are private sites, they are not accessible. Just use it as a template, create a new site, and the new site is completely set up with everything. And this is this takes
awesome.
A second. This is very comfortable, something you can do with single sites too, but not with a simple button click. It's, that's nice about Multisite. But it's tricky too, because if you have just one network in a Multisite installation, you cannot tell the difference between custom tables for the main site and custom tables for the network. There's no way to get this. They all share the same prefix, and you can just try to narrow it down what tables to copy and what tables not to touch. This is tricky. It did cost me a lot of time to get this in a state where it isn't too broken. But I tell our users always, don't use the main site as a template. Create a separate template site, and then everything works nice.
I think one other thing, by the way, I haven't actually checked, but I think WordPress.com is actually about 60 million blogs, not 60,000. Or it might even be up to near to 80 million now. It's, yeah, so like it does scale with the right people.
There's
Hi.
Hi.
It's time over.
Oh, our time is on. Oh, but please ask a question.
Okay. So let's assume that I have 10 customers, and will this multi-site solution will be good for me? I want each of them to have a different set of plugins installed in their sites.
In this case, I wouldn't recommend a multi-site. You can set up a separate domain and a separate directory on a server for the plugins. Just a plugin directory. If you go to WordPress Stack Exchange and search under my answers, I have written a tutorial for that. I can also link it when I write the blog post. Don't mix multiple clients in a multi-site, because if one site gets compromised in any way, this happens. All clients are compromised. You don't want that. One angry client is enough. You don't need 10. Yeah. Don't use multi-site for everything, and you can save the same time with a custom plugin directory. You cannot use a custom theme directory. This is an annoying shortcoming in WordPress, but for plugins it's that easy to do. Okay.